All right. What movie is that from? All right, back on the F-150 91. I am going to finish the install of the alternator and the electric window motors and make sure that all that works and then move on to something else. All right, so here we are. I'm going to remove the original, or the one that it came with, alternator. I already removed the battery because, well, I never installed it from the last time. So let me go ahead and start popping that off. Two bolts and she's out. Well, I wasn't expecting to do all that, but it is completely removed and disconnected. I was hoping to just be able to disconnect this wire and then basically keep the wiring as kind of an emergency situation where I could replace it with something like this. But honestly, this thing is like, I don't know, fused in, whatever, super connected, screwed in, you name it. This one pops out, but doesn't really matter. What you end up having to do is kind of pull the wire out from there. It's clipped in by these clipped in by these little plastic barb things, whatever you want to call them. And then you have to disconnect these two wires here. At least that's what it is for my case. One wire came off of the starter solenoid from the positive side of the battery, and the other one disconnected from something way down here. I'm actually probably just going to tape that up and close it up just so that way there's nothing in there, no contact or whatever, or junk can get in there. But now she's completely out. All right, so what I'm replacing it with is a Tough Stuff alternator. It is a single wire made for Ford, so at least it has the configuration for you to kind of connect it on there or bolt it on there. It's a 100 amp unit, so it's going to be more than enough to power everything I need. I'm not putting in a crazy sound system or all kinds of electronics. It's kind of keep it as a fun daily driver. I already opened it and checked the contents just to make sure everything was good. So I'm going to take it out and let's compare it. Honestly, it looks pretty much the same. I don't really notice any difference other than the fact that it's a simpler design and you don't have this long pigtail. And all these parts where the bolts go in seem to be pretty much the same size. So I don't see any issue with that working. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and install it. All right, alternator is installed. I still have to do the two wires that are here. There's a power wire, obviously, and then there's a little ground wire. I just did a quick little check and made sure that the belt was okay, that it wasn't going to bind on anything or that it was misaligned, so that's good. The install is super easy, and in this case, just two bolts, that one here and that one there. I did put some anti-seize on the bolts just to make sure it would make my life a little easier later on, and then just tightened it. I didn't do a specific torque or anything, and just hand tightened, made sure it was good and solid, or at least felt solid. But it'll be something that I keep an eye on just to make sure everything is okay. I'm going to make those wires, or get the wires. I have one the big wires, and then I just need to make a 10 gauge wire for the ground. All right, everything's done. It's a pretty simple install. I did a couple little extra things which aren't necessary. Like, for example, I cleaned up this wire here because it was kind of just tucked in, and I wanted to put a kind of an end on it and make it easier to remove and install later on. Nothing special, but you know, time consuming. I also went ahead and cleaned the contacts on the starter solenoid, made sure everything was good, that everything was going to work properly. Now, I installed a 4 gauge wire from the alternator to the starter solenoid, and it's about 3 feet long. And I also installed an 8 gauge wire on the grounding post on the alternator to the battery here. Now, this one here, it said I could use a 10 gauge. I thought I had 10 gauge, but I didn't. It was 12 gauge. I ended up finding this stereo grounding wire from the Thunderbird and installed it on here. It'll work fine, no issues there. Put some ends on it, tightened it down, perfect. Now, just for your reference, read the instructions. It's always good because it'll tell you how to set it up and what kind of wiring you need. Here it says that it's based on a 4-foot wire for the battery to the alternator, and it even tells you what gauge you need. So if you're going to have 75 amps, you need 8 gauge, 100 amps, 6 gauge. Now I went with 4 because that's what I could get. There's no issue with anything working or not working. It doesn't really matter in this case. And then obviously if you go to 150 amps or 200 amps, it says the size there, which is 4 gauge in this case. And like I mentioned, it said 10 gauge for the grounding wire. Super simple, honestly, guys. This is such a sweet, easy setup. I barely had to do anything. This is something you can do like in 20 minutes, half hour tops, if you're just going to swap it out. So at this point, that's done. I'm going to test it. I just want to warm up my hands and grab something to eat, so I'll be back in a bit. All right. Belly's full, hands are semi-warm. Anyway, I forgot to mention that ground wire that you see there. The reason why you need it is because this is a painted case, and unless you grind it or something, it's not really going to have good contact with the engine or ground. So yeah, that's why you need it. All right, got the battery installed. It's sitting at 13.2 volts. Let's take a look inside and get this thing started. All right, let's see what happens. Everything looks really good. Started right away, no issue. It's definitely cold. Battery charge looks really good. Charging looks good. Belt looks good. So it's warming up and the idle is falling, which is good. I'm going to do something that kind of caused the voltage to drop, which is just turn on the heating fan. It dropped a little bit, but nothing compared to before. Before it seemed like it was really like low voltage, like the arrow would be towards the O rather than in the middle. Now the fan is off. Looks good. All right, played around with it. I tested the radio. Seems to have more power, but the radio is junk. Played with the heater fan. That worked great. It did drop a little bit, but it didn't drop anything compared to what it was before. I got a clean install, super simple, and all the amperage that I could need to run whatever I'm going to run, which is not much. I think the next big electrical thing is probably just going to be switching the fan over to an electric fan rather than being powered off the engine. So like I said, very happy with that. Worth the money. Tough stuff alternators, recommend. The only thing I got to find out is the test of time. Now I'm going to move on to installing the motors for the electric windows. I got both brand new motors for the driver's side and the passenger side. Should just be a straightforward swap, and then I'll pop those in and hopefully get the glass in today. Well, you know what? You always think something's going to be simple, so scratch that. So this is the passenger side. I already installed it, was about to grease it, ran out of lithium grease. Then this wonderful screw over here, the head decided to pop off, so all right, can't drill that out because this is all plastic, and I was drilling all crooked and it wasn't working. So what ended up happening is that that was literally the only thing I could do to try and get some screw in there to try and hold it. It doesn't shake, doesn't move, so I'm going to leave it like that. I'm not even going to touch it. I drilled from the top up here, I drilled from the bottom here, whatever. The drill bit kept going crooked, annoyed the crap out of me. The other thing with these aftermarket ones is they're not identical to the original. This screw hole here does not match up. So what I ended up having to do is notch it like that. I left enough space just to get the screw in, and that way it wouldn't wiggle too much this way, and these two would hold it from moving this way. It's holding on this one, and it seems to be okay, so we'll see how that goes. I still got to install this one, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, got both of them installed. It's a pretty simple process all the way up until something decides to break. One thing's for sure, if these motors stop working, I will be replacing this to manual. No question. It's the simplest form of opening a window, and they never give you trouble as long as you keep them lubricated. Now these electric motors are in position right here, and they're riveted in. I don't have a 1/4-inch rivet. I only have 3/16, so I have to go and get that. I was hoping to get these finished today, but that doesn't look like that's going to happen. Another trip to the parts store. Not a big deal though, honestly. It's pretty simple stuff. I just got to go and get it. So for now, for today, that's pretty much it. And I'll bring you back once I have those rivets. All right, it's been a couple of days. I finally got a 1/4-inch rivet. They fit perfectly here, which is great. So funny story is my first rivet gun broke on me. I fixed it and then found out that the 1/4-inch rivets wouldn't fit in it. I then had to buy a new rivet gun. All right, all the rivets are installed. Fantastic. It's not a hard thing to do. 1/4-inch, 1/2-inch rivets are what I used. Don't completely tighten them down. Get all 4 in. Just kind of squeeze them a little bit so that way it's enough to hold both pieces together. Don't do like I do and make sure that the 2 pieces are stuck together. Otherwise, you'll have to re-drill that rivet out. Once you know that all 4 are in and that everything is secure, go ahead, tighten them down, and you're done. Now I'm going to go check to see and make sure that the arm works. All right, key is in. Let's test this out. Sweet. Works great. All right, let's move on to installing the actual glass and everything, and that way I can feel good about that. Honestly, the weather's been pretty good, so it's nice. All right, I've got everything in place. I got the glass in, I got the little vent glass, and all the rubber seals around it. It is loosely placed in there. It's tight enough that it'll hold it, but loose enough that if it has to move a little bit to deal with the window, then it can do that. So let me cycle the window up and down, and let's see what happens. I'm just gonna go slow because I don't want, I don't want it to bind or break. So far, it went up, no problem. Went down, no problem. Just gonna cycle it one more time. Okay, so now I left the window closed. I'm actually just gonna tighten all the bolts. They look like they've just fallen into the same place as they were originally, so that's great. My only suggestion is, if you're doing this, slide everything in. So there's about 3 pieces here. There's the glass here, the vent glass, the main glass, and then there's a little rod for the track for the main glass. Just put all those 3 pieces in there loosely, line them up, and then start the bolts. I don't know if there's any other way or anything that is a better system, but that worked for me, and it gave me the least amount of trouble. It is tricky. I found that installing the vent glass was a bit of a pain because there's a bracket there. But other than that, it went in no problem. I think it's probably easier if you don't have your rear view mirrors on there, but anyway, I got it installed. Play with it, it'll work. All right, everything is nice, tightly bolted down. I also Loctited the main bolts for the tracks for the glass, the main glass. Everything seems to be working. I cycled it up and down a few times, looks good. So now what I'm going to do is just attach some of the little loose pieces that I want to get on here, and then I'll move on to getting the passenger side done at the same time. All right, so this is about as far as I want to go at this point. I'll reinstall the bottom piece of the door panel. You never really needed to remove it, but I did anyway just to make sure that I wouldn't break it. It's kind of one of those things that I do. If it's in the way, I'm going to hit it. And I put the armrest bracket back in. I'm going to replace the speakers, so that's why I haven't bothered putting back the upper panel, but I'm going to do a whole other video on installing the stereo system. I also went over and re-greased pretty much just the hinges and the track, and just made sure everything had enough grease to function properly. And as always, you put more than you need, which is always good. And then here we are on the passenger side, pretty much did the same thing. Just put everything back on. Again, left the panel off because I'm going to install a speaker, but everything else is there. And again, everything cycled and worked great. Super happy about this. It's good to get these windows closed up. Although I have to say that the weather has been on my side. I think we got a light dusting of snow, but that was it. So I didn't have any issues. Oh, almost forgot to do this. Actually, it makes sense to do it now anyway. Well, actually, I could have done it any time, but I just cleaned up the wires. I just passed the speaker wire back up into the speaker hole, and then that coil that you see back here with the little pink wire, that one there, I just coiled up and put it behind there. That's for the power door locks. Obviously, I'm not using them since the solenoids don't work, and I'm not replacing them. And that's about it. So I'm just resting all the wire here. The clips are back or where they need to be. All right. Power windows are installed. The windows go up and down. The motors work great. Installation is a little tricky sometimes, but fiddling around and playing, you get it. I hate fiddling around with stuff, but in this case, you got no choice. I got it installed. Everything works. Super, super happy. Now for the alternator, extremely happy. The install went super easy. Even gave me a chance just to clean up some of the wires, which was fantastic. I highly recommend it. Tough stuff alternators. You know, their chrome will get you home. If you wanted a chrome alternator, that is. But super easy install. Again, really happy with that. Really happy with both things. You know, easy to do by yourself. Just give yourself some time. You know, it's not overly complicated and you can do it in a good weekend. All right. I got to move on to other stuff. So thanks for watching and take it easy.